or you should introduce yourself. Video.
Good evening, Doctor. I'm May. So
Hi, May.
thank you for agreeing to interview with us.
You're welcome.
Okay, so basically, what motivated you to be an expatriate?
Expatriate. I didn't think for the minute about whether I was an expatriate or local, but I did want to move to another country of a totally different system. I just felt I wanted to grow in life, and moving into another country, working in another country, gives me that ability to grow. If we stay in the environment where we grow up, we learn and grow to a certain extent, but when we go to another country, you are exposed to new stresses, new challenges that you're not normally exposed to as you're growing up as a child in your own home country. And I think that gave me the great opportunity to do that when I first did move overseas. Yeah.
Okay, so actually, where is your home country?
Home country is Australia.
Australia.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up in Mildura, which is about 1,000 kilometres west of Sydney,
Wow. Okay, that's quite far.
on the edge of the desert.
Yes.
47 degrees in February, so it's quite hot.
What made you choose Malaysia as a country of choice?
It's a good question about coming to Malaysia. Before, I didn't come to Malaysia originally, I went to another country, but moving from another country where I was expatriate, which was Hong Kong, and coming to Malaysia, the big change was having a promotion in ranking and also a promotion in terms of responsibility. So before, when I was in Hong Kong, I was associate professor at the University in Hong Kong. Coming here, I've become professor and also now head of accounting and finance department. So also promotion and also responsibility. So big, very attractive. If I come to Malaysia as a country, I am attracted to the Southeast Asia, the tropical climate, because I love the hot weather. My hometown, like, as I said, 47 degrees.
Yeah. And the constant weather, no need to change for winter clothing and whatnot. Right?
It's even easier, much easier, yes.
Okay, so actually, what are the challenges you face when working in Malaysia?
In Malaysia?
Yes,
Or
as in culturally, as an expatriate, were there any cultural shocks or were there any work ethics wise?
I think the biggest challenge is in the level of energy and the sequencing of time and how people have different views of time and how they think how time in getting things done, and so you have to adjust to the different pace. So there's a different cadence in Southeast Asia where more tropical weather and things are just a little bit slower. Now that may not be a culture thing, it may be partly a weather thing too, because I think in tropics all around the world things are a bit more, let's take it easy, a little bit easier. Doesn't mean that people are not working hard, but people pace themselves a little bit. Whereas I come from Hong Kong, which is, wow, it's a pressure cooker environment and it's about getting things done fast. Yesterday, it should be done yesterday. Yeah. Whereas here, things are a little bit slower. And so, as a leader, I need to step back and empathise more for the situation of my team and the cadence with which they view time and the cadence with which they like to get things done. And so it's just a matter of having that patience and then taking time to understand on what page people are on and what cadence that they work at. I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, so leading into that, were there any problems adjusting yourself towards all these time?
Always some problems. There's always some frustrations. I'm thinking maybe something should have been done yesterday, but suddenly, okay, it's going to take longer. Okay, just calm down. Okay, just calm down, relax, and I guess it gets back to personal psychology and just having that calmness with oneself and making sure that you are not overly stressing yourself in just control what you can control and let the environment work itself out. Okay.
So I'm pretty sure it's quite stressful at some times like this, like when you face challenges and conflicts. But how do you overcome it? and how does it affect you in your work?
I think it's a general question for expatriates, whether it's in Malaysia or in other countries. I think the big way that I overcome the stresses as an expatriate is by exercising 6 times a week. And so in other words, it's very important to work on the physical, the mental, and the psychological, or the physical, the mental, and the social. But the physical is very, very important. And so de-stressing through exercise makes a huge difference.
Yes.
And I guess the time at which you exercise, I think having the habit of doing exercise, it makes you, as an expatriate, it allows you to fit into a whole range of environments, because the exercise is a personal thing. It's not always dictated by the environment. And if you have a regular plan of exercise, then you're looking after yourself, and then you can give the rest of your day to the environment that you're in. And then you feel much more calm because you've actually looked after yourself first. Look after yourself first, then you have more energy to give to others around you.
That's good. Okay, so how do you think you've adjusted in Malaysia as compared to previous places?
Well, my previous place, as I said, is Hong Kong. But adjusting to Malaysia has been actually much easier than expected and faster than expected. And I think partly because I've got a good team with me that shares a lot of information with me, and also helps me in answering questions or filling in the gaps of things that I need to get done. And so without a local team, it's very hard for me to adjust as fast as I could.
Okay, so there weren't any concerns when you first thought of coming over? Or
I didn't have initial concerns myself.
regarding like Malaysia, from what you heard from the news or something, like what were your perceptions of coming over?
Well, I knew it was good food and good air, lots of fresh air, and good environment for doing lots of exercise. And so I think the positives outweighed the negatives, and it was just a matter of, I think the biggest negative is I had a rich social environment in Hong Kong where lots of network, I've developed friendships, and then coming here I'm developing new friends. So it's just a matter of reaching out. But naturally, I think as expatriates, it's very important that we need to be more outgoing so we can actually connect, develop our network fast when we go to new countries. I think that's a critical thing that helped. So just reach out. And I think in academia it's much easier to be an expatriate because you can have common understandings and sharing of the research that you do with academics across countries. And you can actually take the research with you. It's not like you have to stop what you're doing in Hong Kong, where I was, and start a new thing in Malaysia. If you're working in corporate, you go from one corporate to another, you stop your identity with one company, you start your identity with another one. But with academics, half of your identity is with the research that you do, and sort of that goes with you. The other half changes with the university that you're with. So I was at Baptist University in Hong Kong, now I'm with Monash University. So that sort of half of my identity has changed with the university I'm with. But the other half is all the effort I'm putting into doing the management accounting research, which my research community around the world just sees me as publishing and expected to publish in these top journals, no matter I'm at Monash, no matter I'm at Baptist University. So I think it's much easier as an academic to have these identity shifts. And it makes it easier to settle into a new country because you can readily connect with other academics in a new country, and you have that higher level of trust because it's likely that you have met other academics in the country you're coming to. Or you talk to someone new you don't know personally, but you know of them because they do similar research to you, and then you can immediately start connecting. So I think for those reasons, it makes it easier for an academic to move from country to country.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so actually has Monash helped you in making the decision to coming over and like cancelling out all the concerns that you had before coming?
Wow. Yeah, Monash helped a lot. First of all, in doing all the paperwork.
Oh, yes.
And dealing with the work permit, that you need to have a work permit to come and work in Malaysia. Number 2, you need to have a teaching permit. So if you want to teach in Malaysia, then you've got to have a permit for that. So you need 2 permits. And number 3, there's other things helping fix up the EPF and then banking and all the things associated with that. Monash, they had a team that helps with that and made it much easier. Very easy.
So housing and everything, you did not have a problem with?
Housing, I just went with local agents, and then it was just a matter of looking at about 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, enough is enough. Okay, I just want to choose the one, number 5. Let's just do it. Let's go with that one. And so you fix that out by visiting properties over about 3 weekends, and there's enough, and then you can move in. Yeah. So normally, the great thing about with Monash is they create 2 weeks of accommodation in a local hotel, and then during that time, you've got time to look for your accommodation. That's more than enough to look and then find and then settle in.
Does Monash like subsidize anything for you, or
Not an accommodation wise, no. And I think that's a country specific thing. Like in Hong Kong, when you work in Hong Kong, most of the organisations and universities, they will subsidise the accommodation because the cost of accommodation is much, much higher than in Malaysia. And in part, it's a similar case in Singapore. And so that's why some of the universities in Singapore, they have their own accommodation for that purpose anyway. So, yeah.
Here it states that you are married.
Yes.
So does Monash actually help with any like travels back home or like
Okay, well
visiting home?
that's part of the contract. Generally, all expatriates are allowed to have home travel every year
Yes.
back to their country, normally their country that they come from, or their original country. So there's a bit of flexibility there in deciding on that. So for me, it's Australia. So I get home leave to Australia once per year. So I think that's good. But then the other leave that I take to go back to Hong Kong every month, and I usually combine that with my research and my connections with professional network, which helps to drive the networking of the department here.
Okay, so health issues and all this, they are all covered as well.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay. So health insurance is very important for expatriates because often expatriates have that mind where you may not retire where you are working.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're living at home where you grew up, and then you may get health coverage with the university you work for, but you know you're going to retire there, and so you can actually set up insurance plans in your home country that sort of extend past your retirement into your retirement from working. But when an expatriate, sometimes you don't know where you're going to retire, and so sometimes the health benefits are good while you're working, but expatriates don't always think about, well, okay, what happens after you stop working?
Yeah.
Because after you stop working, when you're an expatriate, are you allowed to stay in that country? Number one. Are you allowed to have some of your non-claim history on health insurance overlap into a personal insurance policy of the same company, which some insurance companies in Hong Kong do this, and that may not be the case in every country. For me, I think the benefit with Malaysia is that Monash is connected with Sunway, which is connected with the Sunway Medical Centre, which is one of the world-class hospitals in this area. And so I think the quality of the health provisions is probably just as important as how much coverage is being provided. I think quality, coverage, and so it's a good mix. Got very high quality, it's at a good price, and the coverage covers all of that anyway. So that's good.
Okay. Well then, for the second question actually is, what are your initial expectations as your role in Monash itself, and do you think the organization has already helped you achieve that?
Wow. Okay, so now you're getting on to not necessarily expatriate, but more my role as head of department or as professor. Well, initially I started as professor, and then after an initial period, then moved to head of discipline of accounting and finance. Has Monash helped me? Monash helped me a lot in terms of mentoring from the head of school and from other directors in the university and other professors in the school, including in accounting and then other disciplines. So get feedback, positive and negative, and get feedback on, what you can do and what you can't do and things like that. So it's a learning process. And so in that way, Monash has helped me a lot. Do a lot, yes.
Yes. Then about the work environment here, like, is there any business practices that you find quite intriguing or very new to you?
New. Hmm. I think the big difference from Hong Kong is the multicultural environment here. And so you have Chinese, you have Malay, you have Muslim, and you have Indian. You have lots of different cultures here. And so they all have their different religious holidays. And so I find, wow, that's amazing. There are holidays that spring up on a Friday, on a Monday or Tuesday. Oh, wow, I'm coming into work. But everyone's on holiday. Oh, okay, all right. Yes. And they're different state holidays. So you can go to a calendar and say, oh, there's a state holiday. Yeah, but that's not your state. That's in another state. Oh, okay. So how do I know when there's a holiday in Selangor? Oh, you've got national holidays, then you've got the Selangor holidays. Oh, but over above that, you've got to double check with what Monash University allows as holiday.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of complexity there in working out when the holidays are. But when I was in Hong Kong, it was very, very clear when there's a holiday and when there's not a holiday. So it's fine. It's fun.
Okay. Well, actually, it leads to the next question: is which business practices in Malaysia seems familiar or strange to you?
Strange.
Yes, like the hierarchical ways that people address people, others, or
It's interesting, coming from a more formal Chinese type culture of Hong Kong, mainland China, coming to Malaysia, it's actually much more, in some ways, more Western than the Hong Kong. Because Hong Kong is very well developed, British heritage, but it's Chinese. And so it has a lot of Chinese values in how the organisation is run. Whereas here, because you have the ethnic mix and you have all these different cultures and not one dominating culture, especially in government institutions or in the university here, then I think there's much more openness in the communications, which is not the case so much in Hong Kong. So I think that's the biggest difference. And the more openness, it's great because you can, number one, you can learn faster. Number two, when you make mistakes, then it's not so much of a stigma attached to making mistakes as there are in just a pure Chinese culture like in Hong Kong or mainland China. So I think these things are different here. And in some ways, yeah, it's much more Western here. Much more Western. Much more like Australia and Malaysia than it is in Hong Kong.
okay.
Yes.
Surprising to hear. What about comparing Malaysia to Australia itself?
Malaysia to Australia, as I just said, actually it's probably closer to Australia.
Closer to Australia.
Much closer. I have lived in Singapore for 2 years and very similar to Singapore. I think the big similarities with Australia are definitely with the English language is very strong. And so you have a clear channel of communication and less misunderstanding. And so I think the difference with Australia is the cost of living here is much, much cheaper than Australia. Much, much cheaper. People don't understand that if the cost of living in Australia has gone up tremendously, especially in Melbourne, Sydney, very similar to Hong Kong in many, many ways. We're not just talking about property, but we're talking about the overall. When you go to the supermarket, the car, petrol and everything like that, you put everything together. Melbourne, Sydney are very expensive now. So Malaysia's much, much cheaper than that. So that's a positive difference that I'm happy about while being in Malaysia.
Okay. Then what are some of the ways that you help yourself adjust to Malaysia, being other than exercising? Like
Exercise is very important. Exercise and also daily rituals of listening to motivation tapes and listening to positive affirmations, listening to positive conversations about philosophy, motivation, psychology. Every day is very, very important. So in other words, preparing the inner self is very, very important for tackling the environment, no matter where you are. Okay, but that's key to me. So if you say other than exercise, then it's more that mental preparation every day. I think that's very critical.
So I would assume you consider yourself quite successful in your current position?
Successful, well, physically, Okay, so they're very. Which dimension of success are we talking about?
Like self-fulfillment or...
Self-fulfillment, definitely. Physically, definitely. My heart health hasn't deteriorated since coming here, based on my last checkup. So my blood pressure hasn't gone up since coming here, based on my last checkup. So physically, it appears that it hasn't been a disadvantage coming here. So physically, good. In terms of working with colleagues, the feedback is generally good, more positive than negative. So that's good. And number 3, I've got to do things that I never had a chance to do in Hong Kong. And so that has sharpened my mind. And sharpening the mind means putting the mind in a discomfort zone enables the mind to develop and grow. So, for example, I've been asked to make many speeches at short notice. And so it's not something that you can practice for weeks and weeks and weeks on end and then polish it. It may be the next day. Can you do this? Sure, let's do it. And then you get up there and you speak. And you fail or you survive. And that's the way to learn. And you put your mind out of the comfort zone. I think getting out of the comfort zone is very, very critical for that development and that self-fulfillment. For me as an expatriate, that's very important.
Okay, well then, in the business field, as in now, like, what do you think about the ethical sides of the way we run in Malaysia?
Oh, wait a minute, this is a bit tricky question. You asked me about the ethics of locals here. I'm not sure if
local business procedures.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm qualified to comment. I don't know too much. Like as an academic, I want to be able to say, okay, so I know about the corporate governance of different countries in Asia, and then I know of colleagues who study the different corporate governance practices, and then they find that the corporate governance practices in some countries in Asia are weaker than what they should be. Okay, so is Malaysia one of them? Maybe, but that's a conversation that you need to have with academics that work in that area. So I know some of my colleagues that are working in that area and they're looking at the corporate governance challenges of Malaysia, but those challenges are also ripe in other countries throughout Southeast Asia, not just Malaysia. And I guess every country has these different challenges. Here we're talking about business practice. Like even in Australia or the USA, there's a lot of what we call legalised corruption going on. So where you've got big business doing the legal thing, but it's really shady or it's grey area stuff anyway, but it's legal, so then it's okay. All right? So let's not judge one country against another, which one's good, which one's bad. I think corporate governance is a challenge for every country, or corporate governance of business practices is a challenge, but there's different areas of corporate governance that different countries are challenged on. And for Malaysia, it may be how they structure the board of directors. In Australia, it may be how they appoint the CEO and how they structure the board of directors there. In other areas, it might be the dual roles of the CEO. So now in Hong Kong, you can have CEOs that are also allowed to be chair or board of directors, and they're allowed to separate the share ownership from the board composition. And so they're able to have where the CEO or the owners can have a majority of control of the board, but they don't have to have majority control of the shares in the company. Interesting. Yes. And so that's different in different countries. So if we go into corporate governance, there's always these challenges. But I think your question is more about Malaysia. I think every country in Asia has their different challenges. I think the big challenge for Malaysia is in the board composition and transparency of the practices, and also accounting reporting, transparency of the accounting standards and the reporting. And that's something that Malaysia's getting better at as time goes by anyway. Yes.
Have you experienced any of these problems yourself personally?
I haven't experienced that personally. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, well then. So to wrap up this interview, the last question would be, what personal skills or capabilities you think you have used to address your work challenges so far?
Well, my drawing skills, as you can see, I've got lots of drawing, so I like drawing. I like to diagram my thoughts. So I've actually created diagrams for the challenges for PhD students, for the research strategy of the department, for the teaching strategy of the department, and also for the fintech strategy of the department and other initiatives of the department. So I actually went and drew all these diagrams. And so I like to map it out. If I cannot picture it, then it's hard for me to communicate it to other staff in the department. I think the other skills that I'm using is in terms of listening skills, and very important is